I am backstage. I'm waiting for my cue, and I'm the last one up. So instead of the buzz of activity that has surrounded me all night, I'm alone, and it's hollow and surreal. And I keep having the sense that if I grab my stuff and head out the back door, I'll somehow disappear, and nobody would ever know, except that my mom and my husband are sitting there in the audience, and they would probably notice. As a 44-year-old former corporate attorney and mother of two, I would like to think that a lot of people would notice, but really they probably wouldn't until they ran out of clean clothes or they needed something to eat. The MC's voice is muffled because the speakers are facing away from the stage towards the audience, which makes me really nervous that I'll miss my cue or not be able to hear anything once I'm on stage, and everything will be weirdly off sync like a badly dubbed foreign film, and I don't want to be like a badly dubbed foreign film. My focus keeps switching between trying to hear my name being called and the taped down extension cord that is running over the curtain line that I have to step over to get on stage, and then trying to remember what I'm supposed to do once I get out there. All of this is going through my head, and somehow I hear my name and I make it out on stage with my insecurities clinging to me. And in that moment, I have a choice. I can let go and I can reveal myself. I can go all in for me with all the enthusiasm I can muster. I can feel the joy of the moment, the heat of the spotlight, the roar of the crowd, and I can know that no matter what happens out there, I will leave with the satisfaction of knowing that I lived fully in the moment and I gave it my all. Or I can let the fear of judgment cripple me. I can play it safe by covering and hiding myself. I can stay in my head and limit myself to exactly what I'm supposed to do. But it won't be as much fun that way. And inevitably, I'll end up as obsessing about all of the things I should have done and what would have made it better, which has happened to me more times than I care to admit. Now, before long, my fat's jiggling and my hair is stuck in my lipstick, and I'm shaking for all that I'm worth, flinging judgments and insecurities. And what will people think of you if you do this, Laura? Off of me for all I'm worth. And in that moment, I am free. I am free like I have never been free before, because for the first time in a really long time, I was unapologetic. I was joyful and I was fully connected to myself as I was, not as I thought that I should be. And that's when I knew with absolute certainty that no matter what else happened in my life, I would choose me. I knew that I was done hiding and I wanted to live the rest of my life as I had in that moment, unencumbered and powerful and fully connected to my heart and to my soul. And I wanted to live fully exposed as me. But what I didn't know was how that commitment that I made to myself that day on stage would be tested over the next 10 years. What would it be like for you if you were so confident in yourself and your worth that you never stepped back and let the moment pass you by? What would it be like for you to expose yourself comfortably and confidently as you were, and to know that no matter how things turned out, you could always say that you were true to yourself, and that going forward, you would never betray yourself again by seeking to please, conform, and perform for others? Since you're here, it's my guess that you might be thinking, well, that would be pretty amazing, Laura. And one day I really hope to get there. But right now, I have just got to insert whatever excuse that you've got at the moment. Whether that excuse is waiting for the kids to get older, or waiting until I figure myself out, or waiting until I get through this current crisis, or waiting until I earn enough money, my guess is that you are waiting for something to happen before you let yourself live. We think if we just fix ourselves, we will finally be happy and free to live the life the way we want to live our life. And whether it's losing the last 10 pounds, getting our relationships under control, overcoming imposter syndrome, whatever it is, we live in this perpetual state of waiting where our real life, the life that we dreamed we would have, is always just around the corner. It's always just about to begin, just as soon as this one little thing happens, just as soon as we have been deemed worthy enough, then we will let ourselves live. Living like that keeps us trapped. It keeps us always striving for more or settling for less, which is the ultimate betrayal of self. Because as long as you are seeking validation outside of yourself, you are never going to be free. You are never going to arrive. You will never feel worthy because there's always something else that you think that you need to do first. Setting your soul free, finding the happiness you crave, doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from revealing the wounds within, from dancing with your shadow and finding worth in who you are, in knowing yourself, showing yourself, and being comfortable exposing yourself exactly as you are in this moment, not as you think that you should be. We live in a patriarchal culture that gives women what I like to call the feminine wound. This wound comes from living in a culture and a system that values masculine and demeans feminine. Being raised in this system means that oftentimes we're not even aware that we've been wounded. But just because we're not aware doesn't mean that the wound doesn't exist. It just means that we need to be more diligent about uncovering and understanding the ways we have been conditioned to abandon and to betray ourselves. Now, to be clear, not all women and girls embody all the traditional feminine traits any more than all men and boys embody traditional masculine traits. It's just that our society values things like competition and logic and quantifiable results over things like collaboration and intuition and process. And because of that, many girls feel shame and embarrassment for their natural feminine tendencies. Tendencies that are encouraged to be covered up or left behind if girls want to be taken seriously or succeed in a professional world. Women grow up believing that who they are is wrong. After all, don't we all know that women's voices are wrong? Women are so hard to listen to because we're either too shrill or we're too soft and little girl like to be taken seriously. And while women know that if we want to get our point across, we need to pitch down our voices, we need to use fewer words. What accommodations are men making for us? If we're not the ones who are wrong, then why are we always making accommodations for them? Being the one who bears the children also somehow makes women wrong. Even though having a child takes two, a man and a woman, the economic consequences of having children falls to women, not to men. Why else would making accommodations for childbirth not be important? According to the Pew Research Center, among the world's 41 developed nations, the US is the only country that does not mandate paid leave for new parents. We are rock bottom on the list of parental accommodations because we have no national policy for paid leave. Did you know also that most sex ed curriculum does not even mention the clitoris. No wonder there's all this confusion around women. No wonder there's all this misinformation around sex. No wonder our sexual response is seen as abnormal. Yes, women are very different than men. But when we only educate our children and ourselves about men's bodies and their organs and not women's bodies and their organs, it stands to reason that collectively we are going to see women as wrong. Women in the workplace are wrong too. Across the board, we still make 17% less than men. And when we become women, or when women become mothers, which is a double wrong, we earn even less. Women with children earn only 68 cents on the dollar, while, get this, men with children earn more. And because women step away from their career for caregiver responsibilities more than men, over a lifetime, women earn significantly less than men for the same work, which explains why all women in all racial and ethnic groups have a higher incidence of poverty. How can we not have a feminine wound when having a body part that's completely ignored, having the natural pitch of our voice criticized, and bearing children and then stepping away for caring for others be unworthy of accommodation? Personally, within our bodies, we are also seen as wrong too. How many women do you know personally who are unsatisfied with their body? How many women do you know that use cosmetics, color their gray hair, wear shapewear, use filters on their Instagram photos, diet, use Botox, or have even considered plastic surgery? For me, it's pretty much everyone. And while I love makeup and shapewear and Botox as much as the next, I also recognize how tied into the idea of staying young I am and how futile that really is. And while it might seem superficial, one study done by bingeeating.com found that 70% of adult women reported withdrawing from activities due to body image. 70% is not superficial. That is an entire life gone to waste. And while the fitness industry, the weight loss industry, and the self help industry, which are all almost exclusively focused on women, bring in billions of dollars a year, if 70% of women are still sitting out on their lives, and pretty much everybody that we know is dissatisfied with some part of their body or their life, the way we are seeking to solve our problem, the way we're seeking to heal this feminine wound is clearly not working. In almost every part of life, women are perceived by themselves and by others as being not quite good enough. Like who we are and what we value and what we look like and how our bodies work are not quite right. Because of that, we have a feminine wound that we carry in our hearts. And that wound tells us that we are broken. And that if we only do more and work hard enough, we can fix ourselves and make everything right. Wherever we go, this wound of being female, of being wrong because we're not like men, is with us just under the surface, reminding us that if we just do a little bit more, we'll be worried. We face unfair situations because of who we are, not because we're not good enough. Time and again, our identity is betrayed because we bear the children, because we have a clit and nobody knows what it is, because we have body fat and thighs and hips and breasts. But do you know what's worse than being betrayed by society? What's worse is the way we betray ourselves. Every time we seek to please or conform or perform for others in an attempt to be worthy, which is probably why the number one regret of the dying is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself instead of a life other people expected of me. Sometimes we really feel that pain of self betrayal. We're terrified that we've wasted our lives and facing an unsettling transition or a divorce or something like that. We see how short and precious life is, and we buckle down and we commit to doing everything differently. How? Not by living and doing things differently, but by fixing ourselves more, covering our flaws, and molding ourselves into who we think we should be. Whether it's a new diet or exercise plan, like right now because it's the beginning of the year, or healing our inner child so we can finally get the love that we want. Instead of exposing ourselves and our wound to the light so it can be seen and so we can be known and loved for who we are, we embrace the lie that who we are is wrong. And we waste our time, our money, and our energy fixing ourselves when we're not broken. Conforming to some idealized standard of womanhood that will never bring us joy. And that is the biggest betrayal of all. While we typically think of betrayal as infidelity, betrayal comes in many different forms. It can be as simple as somebody betraying a confidence, or as complex as the realization that we've betrayed ourselves all along by selling out to dreams that were not our own. It can take place at work, between friends or family members. Betrayal can be financial, or it can be within your family. Betrayal is defined as the breaking of an expectation that we have relied on that ruptures our view of ourselves or the world. And no matter what the circumstances, it shatters your soul. When I learned that my husband, my cherished husband of 23 years, who I had sacrificed everything for, had been cheating on me for 15 years with 5 different women, I was beyond devastated. The shock, the absolute shock of that betrayal by the person that I loved and trusted with all of my heart more than anybody else didn't make sense. It made it seem like my whole life, like the past 15 years, my kids' entire childhood, vacations, anniversaries, holidays, had not been what I thought. Like I was living a lie that didn't make sense. My future, my dreams, everything I had worked for and sacrificed for and believed in, I suddenly found out was not true. And I couldn't get my head around any of it. But what was worse than what he did to me was what I did to myself. I internalized what his betrayal said about me, and I let my worthiness be decimated by other people's actions and other people's choices that I had no part in. I questioned what I had done to cause this, and I spent time mourning all of the things that I could have done differently. I made it about me. The voice inside my head said things like, this kind of stuff happens to other people, Laura, people who are not nice. And since it did happen to you, what have you done wrong? What did you do to deserve this? Because you must have done something. And then instead of revealing my wound, standing in my truth, I spiraled into shame. I hid what was going on because I was afraid of what people would think about me. I was afraid I would be judged and seen as bitchy or frigid. So I kept everything to myself. But betrayal exposes the truth, not only about the person who betrayed you, but about the truth of the wound inside of you as well. The wound that until that moment I hadn't seen. What would it be like for you to expose and to heal the wound inside of you too? To stop hiding and know that once and for all, you were enough, just the way that you were. To be sovereign unto yourself and to stop betraying yourself by seeking to please, conform, and perform for other people's validation or approval ever again. How good would it feel to know yourself and to show yourself as you were? That's what the 5 steps of flaunt and the life choreography methodology are all about. I call myself a life choreographer because I help women break free from the never ending cycle of trying to prove their worth. I help them take control of the narrative and create lives that are meaningful and beautiful. I call it life choreography because, yes, I used to dance growing up, so I know what choreography is all about. And just like dance choreography, you've got to work with what you've got. You've got to take all of these different elements into consideration and still create something that is cohesive and meaningful. You need to consider the size of the stage, the construction of the costumes, the tempo of the music, the lighting, and of course, the talent and the abilities of the dancers. A choreographer's job is to take what they have to work with and to create something that's beautiful to watch. And that's the power of choreography. And that's what life choreography is about, taking all elements into consideration and creating something that works for you. FLAUNT is an acronym for the 5 steps that I will walk you through today that will bring you back home to yourself so you can know yourself and show yourself as you are. These are the 5 steps that I use to help me move through my husband's infidelity, that helped me learn how to expose the truth and heal from betrayal. And whether your betrayal is from yourself, the world, or somebody you trusted, it will empower you to begin the process of getting comfortable revealing those parts of you that in the past you covered and hid. Flaunt stands for F, find your fetish. L, laugh out loud. A, you accept unconditionally. N, navigate the negative. And T, trust in your truth. Finding your fetish is similar to finding your why. But instead of finding your external why, it's about finding that internal what. What brings you internal satisfaction? The shift from the external to the internal unhooks you from the need to please, conform, and perform for other people's validation. And it allows you to feel better no matter what's going on around you because you are always in charge of your own happiness. Plus, fetish is a really fun word because it raises eyebrows and it makes you smile. Now, what do you need for your personal satisfaction? Check your answer. If the thing that you claim you need to feel satisfied is something that's outside of yourself, that's conditioned on something else happening first, or that is outside of your control, think again. Answering the question with something like, to be 30 pounds lighter, or to make my family happy, or to find my soulmate, shows how deeply conditioned we are to value external conditions instead of an internal state of being. It shows how conditioned we are to turn over our well being to somebody else. Finding your fetish and satisfying yourself on the inside helps heal the feelings of betrayal that crop up when life lets you down and things don't turn out as planned. Plus, when you know your fetish, you know what to go after and you know what to set boundaries against. When we lack direction and don't know what brings us that internal satisfaction, we become hyper focused on the external, on meeting those external expectations. on seeking approval from others. Instead of validating ourselves based on our own standards and desires, we end up betraying ourselves, limiting our own potential, happiness, and ability to live on our own terms. The next step is L, and that stands for laugh out loud. You may have heard about the fight, flight, or freeze response, or the recently added fawn to that series. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is the body's natural physiological reaction to stress. When faced with stress or any kind of perceived danger, it doesn't have to be real danger, just perceived danger, we will either gear up to fight, we will run away, we will freeze like a deer in the headlights, or we will fawn, which is abandoning our own needs to serve others to avoid conflict or disapproval. When we are in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we are in a state of survival. We are not in our rational thinking adult brains, which is great if a saber-toothed tiger is chasing us, but it doesn't allow us to relax and enjoy and be present in our lives. It keeps us worked up and stressed out or shut down and numb. So if you want to live freely and fully, you need to help keep yourself out of a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. According to the Mayo Clinic, the best way to do that is to laugh. While it might sound kind of frivolous, studies do show that laughter soothes tension, relieves pain, aids in relaxation, reduces the symptoms of stress. And long term, laughter even improves the immune system and it makes us better at coping with stressful situations. It also lessens depression and anxiety and improves self esteem. So, when we have more self esteem, we care less about potential judgment from others. Instead of covering your fear or your pain or living in a state of self abandonment, you can actually use laughter to calm your nervous system, to feel how you want to feel, no matter what is going on around you. AU stands for accept unconditionally. And I like to say that that is the golden center of flaunt because so much magic happens there. Accepting ourselves, others, and the situation unconditionally releases us from the insanity and stress of trying to control that which is completely beyond our control. One of my favorite quotes from Einstein is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So here's my question to you. If fixing ourselves and hiding imperfections and covering our wounds with false bravado hasn't caused us all to arrive joyfully into our own lives, spoiler alert, it's not going to, ever. It's just going to keep you distracted, spending time and money and resources covering and fixing a problem that needs revealing instead of concealing. This kind of radical self acceptance, this ability to know yourself and show yourself honestly and completely as you are, releases you from the compulsion to always be hustling for your worth because you see and accept what's in your control and what isn't. Other people's opinions or judgments are definitely out of your control. So instead of leaning in and doing more or hanging on to the mistakes of the past and beating yourself up, you set yourself free to actually just be in the present moment, to dance with wild abandon to whatever music is playing right now, instead of waiting for that different perfect song. So, unlike the 70% of women who held back from doing what they wanted because they were dissatisfied with themselves, Accepting unconditionally means you never have to sit one out ever again. It means you live fully right now, not when some condition is met. It means you can stop betraying yourself and you can learn how to heal and recover from betrayal from others, from the world, and from yourself, which is the only way to live truly without regret. By finding the courage to expose yourself confidently and comfortably without apology. And yes, it's a new way of living and it does take some practice, which is what the next step is all about. The next step is N, and that stands for navigate the negative. Like a ship traversing the ocean, navigating the negative is a process that requires us to be in the moment, assessing where we are right now, where we're going, and what's coming up in between. So we can stay focused on getting to our destination without being impacted by the storms around us. Plus, as we learned with the Titanic, navigating in the dark doesn't work. It's easier and safer to navigate in the light where we can see clearly what's going on. When we cover and hide where we're at, where we want to go, and what's really going on, we keep ourselves in the dark. We gaslight ourselves. And when we do that, we risk crashing into icebergs. But when we uncover ourselves, bring our feminine wound, our fears, our dreams, our insecurities, the fullness of everything that we are and what's going on in our heart out into the light, we have a much better chance of going where we want to go, of living the way we want to live. A question I like to ask my coaching clients is if they have ever gotten caught in a terrible traffic jam or stuck in a storm or taken a detour and gotten hopelessly lost. And the answer is always yes, because we all have. When you were in that situation, what did you do? How many times did you get out of your car, walk away, and never make it home again? Never. Never did you get out of your car and leave your car never to return again. I promise nobody has done that. You may have been seriously delayed. You may have had to backtrack to figure out where you were, or you may have driven around lost for a while. But no matter what happened, at some point you navigated your way home. So why, in the face of other challenges, do we have a tendency to take things personally, to stop navigating and to give up, to get into this headspace of things aren't working out for me? I'm just so broken. I don't deserve this. I have to fix myself first. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter if you have to go over, under, around, or through. What matters is that you just keep navigating. Because when you do, you will get there eventually. So stop betraying yourself by stopping every time things don't work out immediately. Every time things get hard, keep going. Which brings me to the last step in the FLAUNT framework, T for trust in your truth. The truth that until now, maybe you never even let yourself see. Because as I said before, betrayal uncovers the truth, not only about the person who betrayed you, but the truth about the wound inside that you need to heal. And when you trust yourself, you can untangle from the expectations of others and heal yourself. Nobody knows what it's like to be you. Nobody else can tell you how you feel or whether something is right for you. You are the only person who knows how you feel. And contrary to what other people might tell you, trusting in your truth, healing yourself, taking time for you is not selfish or woo-woo or emotional or weak or anything like that. Nobody just gets over things. It takes honesty and bravery to confront yourself. To know yourself and then show yourself is the most powerful thing you or anyone can ever do. Trusting in your truth and healing yourself means letting go of the way that you have been conditioned to please others, conform to external standards, and perform up to somebody else's expectations and standards, and to learn how to trust your instincts instead. It's about speaking up on your own behalf and embracing yourself. I have a client who was devastated and broken, not only by her husband's infidelity, that's why she came to me in the first place, but by the way her family was actively unsupportive of her decision to end her marriage and leave after her husband cheated. And the more she danced around and tried to justify her decisions, her challenges with building a new life for herself and her kids, the worse her family got. So not only was she grieving the loss of a marriage and processing a soul-shattering betrayal and trying to restructure her entire lives and keep her kids happy, she was also turning somersaults trying to justify herself to her family. During our time together, we started integrating the 5 steps of FLAUNT into her life and decisions every day. And she started to become aware of how much time and energy and resources she was wasting trying to make other people approve of her. Resources that she could have been using to heal herself or to make herself happy instead. So what she decided was instead of like barreling through the divorce and getting it done, she just stopped. She told her attorney and her husband that she needed time to process, and she asked for them to stop the proceedings for 6 months. During those 6 months, she let go of all of the things that she thought she should be doing to prepare for her future as a single mom, and she turned within and she started rebuilding her identity and her self-worth instead. Her goal, her one and only goal, was to remember who she was, to come back home to herself first, and to be able to show herself comfortably and confidently however she was, whether it was scared and hurt or confused, even in the face of her parents' disapproval. So instead of leaping into action and trying to fix everything for everybody, she let the broken pieces of her life lie. She took time to take inventory of what she actually wanted to resurrect and what she wanted to sweep away. She told her kids that she only had the bandwidth to manage one activity and that they either needed to cut back or find someone else to manage the transportation to the other activities. She changed positions within her company so she could have a little bit more freedom. And the best part, the thing that I was the most proud of her for, was when she claimed her need for a solo vacation where she could have time and process for herself. Now, her instinct was originally to drive to the mountains to stay in a budget hotel for the weekend, but she didn't. She decided to take herself to Hawaii for a full week. A decision that was monumental for her because while it felt selfish and wasteful, that was exactly the bold step that she needed to do to remember how important she was and to reclaim herself for herself. And anything less than that wouldn't have given her the space and the distance that her soul really needed to get away and to remember who she was, what she wanted, and to heal from her husband's infidelity and her family's betrayal. From the way she had spent her entire life betraying herself by abandoning her own needs. Being the youngest and the only girl in the family, she saw how she had been cast in the role of responsible one, which meant she was never allowed to fall apart. She was never allowed to make a mistake or to get help. She had owned this identity of being the perfect wife and mother and employee who kept everything together for everyone, and it put her in an unrealistic position of being able to do it all. And instead of debunking that myth, she'd embraced it. But that facade that she created that, yes, I can do this all, really didn't help her or those that she loved. Instead, it kept her hidden, stressed, and unable to connect with herself or her life, which brought up the realization of how much her life had been focused on managing other people instead of on managing herself. And that's where the resentment started to kick in. She started to get really ticked off that despite doing everything right, despite always making sacrifices, her life still blew up in her face. And she vowed that going forward, she was going to stop managing other people and spend time on herself, not by neglecting her kids or falling down on the job, but by looking within and asking herself what was important. Questions that she had never really asked, like, what did she deserve? And what was she no longer willing to tolerate? And in that process, she found herself and her fetish once again. She gained confidence and became more certain about the way she was going to show up. I want you to ask you seriously, how often do you ask yourself, what do I want? What does my heart desire? Because if you're anything like I used to be, you get used to asking questions like, what are you thinking? What do you want for dinner? What do you want to do this weekend? Which leads to a state of disconnection with yourself and is a betrayal of your own wants and needs. And if you have ever thought to yourself, I don't know what I want to do with my life, then that is a huge sign that you have lost touch with who you are. If you don't know who you are, this process can help. And if you are in the habit of checking in with yourself, here's my other question. How often do you honor your own requests? Or are you used to shoving down your own needs and denying yourself? Because so often we martyr ourselves or we self sacrifice, thinking that somehow we will be rewarded for that sacrifice. We say things like, oh, I don't need that right now. I'm fine. I am totally just fine, which inevitably leads to resentment. And the thought, why am I always the one that gets stuck doing this? Why doesn't anybody appreciate me? What would it be like for you to stop making do, to stop settling for less, and to start living for you? Whether it's wearing the dress, taking the trip, or getting up on stage and learning to dance burlesque at age 44 just because you wanted to. How much better would you feel if you gave yourself permission to be who you wanted to be? When I was in law school, I wanted to be a litigator. I wanted to fight for justice. And maybe I could have, but I'll never know because I let myself get intimidated. During my first case as a student attorney, I won. I won the very first case that I ever tried, but instead of congratulating me, the judge berated me. He called me into his chambers and accused me of making opposing counsel look bad because opposing counsel was not prepared. He also criticized my legs, my hair, and my smile. Standing there in his chambers was terrifying, and I was mortified because I didn't know what to do. I was 24 years old and I didn't know what to do. So I stood there and I thanked him and I walked away. I walked away from litigating because I never wanted to open myself up to that kind of mortification again. So I quit. I quit practicing law almost before I even started. I thought something was wrong with me, that I couldn't cut it. And I didn't change the world, nor did I make myself happy. In fact, I burned out and walked away because I was miserable pretending to be who I wasn't. Now, who knows what would have happened if I would have stopped seeking to please, conform, and perform for everybody? If I would have known those 5 steps of flaunt, if I could have healed myself, what would it be like for you to expose yourself, to do with your life what you wanted to do, and to always have your own back? If this is something you crave and you want to take a deeper dive into exploring the ways you've betrayed yourself or held back by covering your desires or wasting your time settling for less, then go to burnout-or-betrayal.com and download your copy of the top 3 ways you betray yourself every day and how to stop. And from there, if you like, we can hop on a call and talk about it further. I like to think about this as learning how to drive. It's awkward at first. Coordinating the steering and the pedals and the brakes and all of that is challenging. But after you've been driving a while, it's easy. And pretty soon, you can do it without effort. And that's what integrating the 5 steps of flaunt into your life and learning to live freely is just like. Thank you for being bold enough to take these steps and to listen and to take this all to heart so you can change yourself now while there's still time. The music is still playing, and it's your turn on stage. Are you going to do what I almost did and head out the back door? Or are you going to strip down and dance? Because I hope you dance. Thank you.